So we have now started off each board meeting with a land acknowledgement. And in that case, I just want to do that and acknowledge that the land on which we are undertaking our revitalization efforts are part of the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Toronto has historically been a gathering place for many Indigenous people, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples today. In addition, this morning, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Paul Kawarja, who is a new provincial appointee to the board, who is here on my invitation. And I know I speak for the entire board in welcoming his involvement and thanking him for, and thank you, Paul, for taking the time to be part of our board. At this point, I'd like to move on to have a motion to approve the approval of the meeting agenda. So could I have a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting?
Jack will move it.
Great, thank you.
Second.
I didn't know who that was, but I assume.
Rob, Steve.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the next matter on our agenda is declarations of conflicts of interest. And I'll ask for others, but I just wish to make it known that I do have a conflict with respect to item 16B, which is Quayside. My company has existing partnerships with one or more of the proponents of the Quayside project. And while I'm not currently involved with these partners in anything on the waterfront or in anything with Quayside, I do believe it is best that I do not participate and have not been participating since the proponents were finalized. And so I will not be available for participation during when that matter is discussed. Can I ask if there are any other conflicts?
Steve, it's Kevin. I just disclosed that I have the similar conflict to you as well with one of the participants in Quayside. So, and I have also not participated in any of the dialogue. Okay,
thank you, Kevin.
Steve, if I can just also clarify, not only have you declared, but we have not shared in the board book any materials with either one of you that pertain to that. So I just wanted to put that on the record as well.
Okay, thank you, George. Moving on, first of all, again, thank everyone for their time this morning, and well as thank our government partners and for their ongoing support of Waterfront Toronto. I think as everyone is aware, and just for the record, our meeting today is being conducted via electronic conference facilities, and the open session of the meeting is recorded and will be made available to the public in accordance with our current practices. So I'd like to now move on to the consent agenda. And as you're aware, what we've started to do or has been doing over the last little while is provide a highlight of key messages, which is for information of board members, which hopefully gives people an opportunity to review ahead of time some of the key important points that we're dealing with. The next part of the agenda has to do with approval of the draft minutes of the last open session of June 24th, as well as July 19th board meetings. And I have to ask for separate motions to approve those minutes. So I would like to ask for a motion to approve the June 24th, 2021 board meeting open session minutes. If I could have a mover and seconder.
Steve, is Jeannie, I'll move it.
Thank you.
And Steve, it's Wendy, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Approved. And then I need now a second motion to approve the July 19th, 21 board meeting open session minutes. Again, could I have a mover and a seconder?
Steve, it's Ian. Can I just jump in for a second? As George noted,
Neither you nor Kevin have had access to the materials. So in retrospect, what we thought we should do is amend the minutes of the July 19th meeting to also record that, so that when you declared your conflict, that the minutes also reflect that you did not receive any of the materials.
So that will now be added to the minutes?
Correct.
Okay, so the minutes is amended by Ian. Could I have a motion to approve?
Steve, it's Leslie. I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Leslie. And a seconder?
Steve, it's
I'm
Rahul.
happy to second. Stephen, it's Drew.
Okay, great, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so the next matter that we're going to deal with in terms of the agenda is George's report, the CEO report. And I know it's supposed to be taken as read, but George, I'm going to turn the floor over to you at this point.
Thank you, Steve, and may I also welcome Paul to the board, and it's great to have your background and experience, so welcome aboard. Steve, I'll just touch on a few things really quickly so that we have time for further discussion. The Indigenous consultations, we continue to work with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and also expanding out to urban Indigenous groups through the City of Toronto's consultation group. To build that relationship, it's been extremely constructive in many of our projects, but one of the things I did want to acknowledge is our National Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th, where we had shared some background materials for our staff to be able to reflect on a bit of the history, and to have some time to look at the issues and to reflect on those issues, and to also think about how we can improve moving forward with our partnerships. So on September 30th, we did have staff work that day, because the Indigenous groups did share with the city, and we followed that direction, that they would rather make sure that people use that day to reflect rather than just to have that day off. The other thing I just want to point out is we had required some Indigenous cultural and safety training for all of our board members, our design review panel, and staff. So we will be requiring all our new board members to take that first level. However, we also have some of us, myself and my executive assistant, have taken the second level, which is taking us from being a bystander to an ally. So we are making that available to board members, the design review panel, and to staff on a voluntary basis. I think there will be a very strong recommendation that as many people take that as possible. The first sessions will be available very shortly. Rose?
The board would have received an email from Kaylee Richardson. The first session starts November 22nd. The board and the DRP members are the first group to take them, and I do believe I saw some emails coming back from board members. Thank you, and if you could just let us know by Friday if you're going to plan to take the session.
I should say it is a very good session. What the focus of that session is looking at when you recognize prejudicial behaviors, how you can actually intervene in a safe manner, and I thought that was very helpful. And that applies whether it's prejudicial towards Indigenous or any other peoples. So I'll leave it at that, and really encourage people to take that opportunity. On the Quayside RFP, that's on the agenda, so I won't touch on that.
George, just before, sorry, I apologize. Just before you move on, I took that course earlier in the year on Indigenous training, and what I'm not sure of, frankly, is, and some other board members may have, so I'm not sure of how that fits in with what's now being proposed.
So the first course, everybody had taken, so they don't, it's really just the new members that would have to take that first course. The second course is voluntary. So we're proposing that if you'd like to take the next level, we're giving you that opportunity. So we're not mandating that, but we're strongly suggesting. And again, it's online. It's a shorter course, so I know that that was an issue with regards to time constraints. So, you know, it is available to you. So Steve, it is now up to you whether you want to take that second course. So
I got it. Okay, thank you. I hope all the board members will do at least the first course. Leslie, do you have your hand up?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes, I do have my hand up. Just a quick, and this may not be the right time, but I do want to flag this, Stephen. At what point, or is there a point at which there will be what I call a more strategic discussion about Indigenous economic reconciliation in the work, the whole portfolio of what we do? I'm going to just put that as a marker. It's not intended for us to have a discussion now, but I would like to understand how the organization is addressing the whole issue of land itself as part of the reconciliation effort around the country.
Steve, if I may, I can jump in on that.
Sure.
So Leslie, I know we did the orientation for our new members. That is a section that we have yet to brief you on, and there's been a lot of activity in engaging the Indigenous sector that we've shared with the board. So maybe what I would suggest is we will find a time for the new members to get caught up on what we're doing. And then we can also talk about whether we want to have a further discussion at a board meeting in the future. But there's a lot of activity, and what I would suggest is we do that offline as a separate session for new board members so that you know what we've done and what our intent is.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry, George, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay, Steve. So as we pointed out, we are working with the TTC, the city, and ourselves, obviously, on the 30% design for the Eastern LRT extension. That should hopefully be concluded by the end of this month, with then the report going to the executive committee and then ultimately to the council before the end of the year. So this is an important piece that we need to get done because it will be some of the discussion that we have with other levels of government about potential funding for the future of the waterfront. I'll leave that. And then I have had discussions both at Farm and at our HR GSR committee about one of the ideas that we're proceeding with, which is a volunteer corps with Waterfront Toronto. So this came out of a lot of discussions. We actually joined the BIA in a cleanup day. I've had discussions since I joined with a number of individuals who want to participate with Waterfront Toronto through other avenues other than employment. So, and you know, an opportunity to, quite frankly, do things with the community as opposed to for the community. We've done a lot for the community, but I think this is an opportunity to do things actively with the community. So we are going to proceed, and the board members did caution us to make sure we don't do this on the side of our desks. So we will make sure we do this thoughtfully with resources and that we don't do too many events. So the intent is to do some cleanup days, maybe some environmental activities that would support us with some of the flood protection and other projects that we do. So we are going to do this in a very thoughtful manner. It gives us the opportunity to educate the public more on what we actually do at Waterfront Toronto, as many people are very supportive of the mandate, but don't actually understand what Waterfront Toronto versus the city and others do. So it gives us an opportunity to educate people directly on this. And then the other thing is it does give opportunity, for example, students who have to get 40 hours of volunteer hours in for their graduation for their secondary school diploma, an opportunity to join us along with other volunteers. When we did have the cleanup day, I shared some of these thoughts with some of the public who actually stopped me to ask what we were doing. They were extremely supportive of doing this and would like to join. So Cameron, in our newsletter, coming out, the Waterfront Toronto newsletter, we, at the end of that newsletter, put out a call for anybody who is interested in joining to at least identify their name and contact so that they could join us. So we anticipated, we were trying to target something for the end of this year before we conclude and get into winter, but it may actually be the spring. So we do want to do it thoughtfully and make sure it's a success. So that's all I'll say on the volunteer corps. COVID-19, we are into a return to work situation here. We actually had senior management back 2 days a week. We've had staff in 1 day a week that will move to 2 days a week very shortly. It has worked very well. We have a mandatory double vax policy for anybody returning or visiting here. And we are in the high and mid 90s in terms of vaccination. So we're in a good state. And I think even from the feedback I've gotten, although it is always a difficult transition on the first arrival, I think people, once they've arrived, have actually felt a bit of relief in terms of mental health and just engaging people again. This has also allowed us to continue to engage with our community partners like the Waterfront Harborfront Center. So we had a joint meeting of our senior management teams to look at our agendas, and we've built a very strong relationship with them. They've acknowledged it's certainly the best relationship they've had in the last 7 years, and we look to build on that. And I'll talk about that later as well. Government oversight, I won't say anything more on that because that actually is on the agenda in terms of government reviews. So Steve, I think I turn it back to you, and if there are any questions, I can certainly address them.
Okay, thanks, George. Great report. Does anyone have any questions of George? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on. I do, however, want to point out that included in the agenda is a calendar for all of our committee and board meetings through the end of 2022. And I would just ask that everybody try as best as possible to put those dates in their calendars now, because it is important that we have good attendance at our meetings. And I just ask to people to take note of that. So the next matter on the consent agenda includes reports from Farm, IREC, and Human Resources and Stakeholder Relations. And these reports are assumed to be read, but I would ask if the committee chairs wish to provide any additional comments. So I'm not sure, but Kevin, is there anything that you'd like to say about in the open session and the farm report?
No, we met on the 14th. The only item for approval, which is later in the agenda here, is the reappointment of our auditors, which there's a separate item on that. We had a fulsome discussion, but talked about liquidity and the other matters that we always do. Would note that the BTY still has us on time and on budget for our the Portland's flood protection. No liquidity concerns, and we're still awaiting, as the materials indicate, approval for the extension of our credit lines as a result of the tri-party government review. So very clean audit meeting, everything in good order. So that would be my general comments, and happy for Lisa to take any questions.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Is there any questions for Kevin? Okay, moving on.
I also welcome Drew to the Drew Fagan to the farm committee. So his input is valued. So welcome to the committee.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Moving on. Wendy, is there anything from the Gsr report that you'd like to highlight?
Yes, Steve, I just wanted to mention that we met on September 9th and we welcomed our new committee member, Raul Bardwaj. And on September 29th, we held a half-day orientation for new directors. And at that session, we welcomed Paul Kawaja. The feedback from the new directors was very positive. So many thanks to the Waterfront Toronto leadership team for preparing a very engaging and effective session. And also, I'd just like to remind directors that the board survey is going to be distributed shortly after the meeting and interviews will follow. So it would be much appreciated if you could complete everything on a timely basis, and that way we can report back to you at the next meeting. And that's it on this end, Steve.
Okay, thanks very much, Wendy. Jack, do you have any comments on the IREC report?
Jack, I don't know if
I think you must have.
Oh, no, there is.
So, no, I'm here. I'm here. Sorry, I was just talking to myself. Thank you. The minutes are quite comprehensive and cover off all the many items that are being considered by IREC, many of which will be considered later on this morning. I'm happy to welcome Leslie to our committee, and certainly look forward to her continued input to our activities.
Great, thanks, Jack. Any questions of Jack? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. We're now under the heading of governance documentation. And as many of the older board members will recall, we did do a thorough review and update of our principal governance documents, and some of those have been previously approved. We have now taken the next step to now complete the documents. And these documents, which deal with the bylaws and the mandates, etc., that are before you, did go and were approved by our Human Resources and Governance Stakeholder Relations Committee, which is now before us for recommendation. But just to make sure that everybody understands the essence of what's in these documents, they're quite lengthy. Hey, Ian, I'm just wondering if you could just give us a few minutes to review it before we pass a motion to approve them.
Sure. Thanks very much, Steve. As board members, as Steve noted, this is I was going to say culmination, but probably the better word would be continuation of a process we started a couple of years ago. We consulted with the internal resources, the senior management people, staff, about all the governance documents. We spoke to and met with board members, committee chairs certainly, and then we involved external counsel, Barry Ryder of Bennett Jones. And so what we've done is there's two purposes. One is to reflect our current practices and needs, and the second is to reflect best practices. And so we approved, as Steve noted, one document last year in December, a number at our March board meeting, and today we have in front of us the balance of the documentation that we had identified for review. And that consists of bylaw number 1, which is our general bylaw. Bylaw number 2, which is our open meeting bylaw. With respect to open bylaw number 1, we made a number of changes in substance, rather in form, not much in substance. Bylaw number 2, you'll see in the materials there's a red line version to the current draft, or those the current bylaw. There are changes of form, and there's a couple of changes in section 6.1, which governs our open meeting law requirements. We've confirmed with external counsel it's consistent with our governing legislation. Bylaw number 3 sets forth board remuneration. Before now, it had been set forth in a resolution. We think the appropriate form for that is actually a bylaw. And the board remuneration provided in the bylaw is the same as the current remuneration in the resolution, with one exception, and that exception is that we've provided that to the extent that we ask board members to attend specific committee meetings, that they are entitled to the compensation for that. But they're not. But otherwise, board members do not get or they only are compensated if they're a member of the committee. The next 3 documents: the mandate of the board, the mandate of the board chair, and the mandate of the CEO. You will note, well, we didn't give you red lines because they went through substantial changes, and that's probably where external counsel had the most input in terms of bringing the documents into reflect best practices, current standards. At the HR committee meeting, there was a comment concerning the mandate of the CEO, that it should reflect the philanthropic efforts of the committee, and that has been now reflected, of the CEO, and that's now reflected in the revised mandate that's in front of you. The wrongdoing policy, there's been some changes, but in substance, not that many, or few. You do have a red line document in front of you. the essence remains the same, is that we require people to identify situations of wrongdoing, and we have an independent accountability officer to who the matters are referred, and in this case, she will make a investigation and report back as needed. We did receive some comments at the HR meeting concerning the process around that and the reporting back, and we'll be looking at improving the processes or changing the processes moving forward in terms of reporting to the board. And then lastly, we have the mandate of the Farm Committee. This was actually approved in March, but we missed one change that we made to the other committee mandates. And that's the referencing ESG. And so the document in front of you now is the revised version. Happy to take any questions. I realize this is for some of you, you've heard parts of this many times over, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions of Ian on these documents? Okay, Ian, I just wanted to ask you one, just to make sure that all the board members are aware. I just saw some minor change on the notice requirements for meetings and materials, and I'm just wondering if you could just briefly go over that so everybody's aware of that.
In bylaw number 1?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's changed in substance, but right now we have a process. There's what our bylaw requires is actually 2 days advance notice, but in actual fact, we've maintained 7 days advance notice for meetings of committees and the board, and materials are distributed by a board effect.
Okay, I just wanted people to be aware that they're in the bylaw 2 days.
Yep. Yeah, that is consistent with, if you will, the statutory requirement, or our bylaw requirement is 2 days, but in actual fact, our service standard is 7 days, and touch wood, we're adhering to that.
Okay, well, this has been a lot of heavy lifting, so Ian, thank you very, very much. And seeing no questions, could I have a motion then to?
Sorry, Steve, I had a quick question.
Sorry, who was that?
It's Michael.
Oh, Michael, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Ian, just saw one change in bylaw number 1 on the indemnity. It was changed from directors and others to officers. I just wanted to understand what that, I guess, why that change and who that captures, and if that's, you know, kind of just if we get a briefing on that, because it's important for everybody, really.
By statute, we're allowed to. Sorry, Michael, I apologize. Can you just reference the section?
Sure. The section was. It was section 9. Indemnities to directors. Yeah, and officers, and it's just changed to instead of others, it's officers, and just wanted to understand, I guess, kind of the rationale and who that takes out of the realm of the indemnity.
Well, in actual fact, the corporation has practiced to indemnify directors pursuant to a separate agreement, which I think each of you have actually signed the new form recently. And that was one of the forms that was approved in March. And as well, officers have specific indemnity, and those are the ones we've identified as, you know, as a matter of law, might have potential liability. Other than that, of course, employees, as a matter of law, are protected by the corporation. So in fact, our actual practice was to provide separate indemnities only to directors and officers.
Okay. So really it's just limiting, I guess, like, I guess who is being taken out of that bucket, if anybody? I was just
as a practical matter, nobody.
Not really. Okay. Okay. Thanks. That's what I thought.
Yep.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other hands. Okay. Jack, could I ask you to move a motion to approve the resolution? And Drew?
Happy to do so. Happy to do so.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Approved. Again, thanks, Ian, for the heavy lifting on that.
Thank you.
Next matter, a brief matter. Lisa, now we're going to appoint our external auditors. I understand this has come with the approval of the Farm Committee. So Lisa, could you take us through this very briefly?
Absolutely, and good morning, everyone, and welcome, Paul, to the board. So, as Ian just covered, in terms of our governance documents, and bylaw number 1 is the board's responsibility to appoint an external auditor. The external auditor audits our annual financial statements. And so the existing board-approved external auditor appointment, the term just ended, the 5-year term just ended at the end of March this past year. And so in accordance with our procurement policy, we completed a competitive procurement process in the open market for an external auditor to audit our financial statements. And we had 4 qualified audit firms respond, and those were evaluated. And of the 4 firms, BDO Canada had the highest total score in terms of technical and financial combined. One of the strengths we really liked about the proposal was their use of technology and data analytics in terms of their audit approach. And it should be noted that BDO Canada has been Waterfront Toronto's external auditor for the last 10 years. And while there's no requirement for government not-for-profit organizations to rotate audit firms or audit partners for public companies, to address any perception that they may be becoming too familiar with Waterfront Toronto as an organization, BDO Canada have rotated the lead audit partner at least once during the last 10 years, and they also regularly rotate their audit staff and the quality review partner on the engagement at least once every 2 to 3 years. So based on the total overall scores and the considerations and factors I just outlined, management and the farm committee recommend the appointment by the board of BDO Canada as our external auditors for the next 3 years, with the option to extend for 2 more years to be a total of 5 years. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I see there is a hand up.
Maybe Michael, historical hand. I'm not sure.
Michael, or is that from last time?
Sorry, that was from last time. Apologies.
Okay, Raul, I think you have a question.
Great, thanks, Steve. Lisa, a quick question. Independence. Does BDO do any other consulting assignments or have any other relationships with Waterfront Toronto?
None. They have none. And if they were to have any, then the farm committee would have to pre-approve that work. And there is.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Lisa? Okay, seeing none, then could I have a motion to approve the resolution to appoint our external auditors? Could I have a mover, Leslie?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I'm happy to move.
And Wendy, could you second that?
Yes, Dave, I'll second. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're going to move on to our priority projects. And David, could you take over the floor? And there's a few little projects there that you're going to talk about.
Thanks, Steve. I will do that. Good morning, everyone. If we go to the next slide. Charmaine, please. Discuss some, or I'll be presenting a photographic update on the work that we're doing across the waterfront. So we've got projects currently ongoing in the Central Waterfront, East Bayfront, and obviously the Portlands. Next slide. First project is in East Bayfront. The contractor working for Menkes is currently redoing the public realm, which we did not complete many years ago when we did the work in Dockside. We left that work undone to allow the construction of the Innovation Center. So now that the building is complete, the contractor is working on the sidewalks, boulevards, street trees, etc. So that's ongoing, will be complete this year. Next. We have commenced the in-water pipes. So these are the storm system pipes that connect Dockside to Bayside and then connect back to the Sherburne Common Water Treatment Facility. You can see that, well, it's difficult to see, but we are putting down a fairly robust steel structure that will carry the number of pipes back and forth between the 2 sides of East Bayfront. You can see on the right, the contractor is using our 333 Lakeshore project or site property to do some of the logistics work. So concrete is batched and at that location and then barged to the location in front of Sherburne Common. Next. In Love Park, work has commenced, beginning with the demolition of the remaining vents from the York Street curved ramp. So that work is now complete. We are undertaking risk management work, so removing some of the contaminated soils, and then the park construction will commence very shortly and is forecast to be complete by the fall of next year. Next, I think there's a few slides of Love Park here, as you can see. Next, Lakeshore Boulevard East. Over the past 5 weekends, our contractors have demolished the ramps from the Gardner and Lakeshore Boulevard east of the Dawn roadway. And that's involved 5 weekends of closures to remove all of the concrete, steel, and the steel vents. You can see that the last piece of work, where, as Julius put it, was the very robust street light hangers that we removed last weekend and replaced with something more appropriate. Next, a few other shots of the work in progress over the last month and a bit. Next. In the Portlands itself, you can see this is a propeller shot, so we take drone shots on a regular basis to show the progress of the work. Next. We have the excavation, Rocky's excavation map here, ice management area, Central River Valley, Don Greenway are all complete. And we are about 60 to 70% of the way through the elbow. Once the Commissioner Street Bridge is complete, we'll be able to complete that excavation and connect the ice management area to the balance of the river around the end of this year. Next. This is the latest drone video, so you can see the Central River Valley. Meandering through the center of the river valley is the riverbed, which is complete. We've got, as it says there, Cherry Street South bridge foundations. The bridge is due to arrive now in November. We have been working on the Atlas crane to make it safe. And
can you stop there for a second?
Sure. Can you
just stop for 1 second? I just find it interesting, but just when you look at that picture, when I took the tour, and I find it just interesting. I won't make any comment, but that thing that looks like a crane is a designated heritage structure. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And it is a crane.
And it is a crane, as is the silos on the that we see in the pictures, right?
Yeah, I believe that the Lafarge silos would ultimately become a heritage structure, but
and the other ones.
Yeah, the other ones that already are, yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just find it interesting. Just want everyone to know that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, David.
So, that's okay. So just on the crane, the other issue on the crane is, and maybe you can, David, just confirm this, that we have to spend $1 million just to secure it with a fence area, just so that people aren't climbing that. So it's not just that the crane is there, but it is costing us money to actually secure it.
And it will cost money in the future to make it.
Sorry, what'd you say, David?
So there will be some additional cost to the city into the future to deal with the corrosion and other parts, other issues surrounding the crane in order to make it safe and keep it there for the entirety of the future promontory park. So,
I hate to be somewhat political, but with our counselor as a guest or on our, I see him on the phone, I wonder what we could do that money to create more affordable housing than worry about the crane. But anyway, that's a personal perspective. Okay, sorry, David.
It's okay. So Canoe Cove, future Canoe Cove, we'll be starting the excavation of that dock wall and the area here, which is the south end of Promontory Park. That barge is involved in reinforcing the structure of the MT-35 dock wall here in order to withstand the pressures of the promontories that we'll be constructing in Promontory Park. Here you can see the West Cove at Cherry Street Lakeville. We've got a little video momentarily that of that cove itself.
And the fish habitat.
And the fish habitat, correct. And there's the North Cove. We've got the existing Cherry Street LRT bridge with the vehicular bridge due to arrive next spring. There is that utility tunnel. There is actually, we are tunneling underneath the Keating Channel in order to install water mains and the sewer mains. Go. Speed up the drone. We are doing work here along the Keating Channel. Where that equipment is, we are installing a stormwater attenuation tank and storage tank, which will eventually be attached to a stormwater treatment facility, much like we have constructed on the north side. And we are just in the process of finalizing tenders for the beginning of construction of the sediment and debris management area. This was done in August, as you can see, because the ramps are still there. The next version will have no ramps. Turning north, we've got the ice management area. This week we started the risk management measures, so the geosynthetic clay liner. We are also currently, the contractors welding together the two halves of the Commissioner Street Bridge, and it will be fully installed in about a month and a half. And then as we turn back to freezing up badly, turn back to the Central River Valley, you can see the beginnings of the crib walls on the north side. Oh, we lost that. There it is again, the harvested trees and root wads that are being installed where the river bends as both river structure and fish habitat. We have some better photos of that, and the fire hall. As well, you can see some structures there. Those are pedestrian bridges that are being constructed. We are using the roof trusses from the old MT35 building as structures, as part of the structure for those pedestrian bridges. Thank you. Next.
David, if I can just clarify, so the next bridge arrives when?
It's looking like the end of November.
Right. So one of the things we discussed with the mayor's office and with the other two levels of government is when the first Cherry Street Bridge, which you saw, arrived, that was a pivotal point where people started to understand and visualize how great this project could look at the end of the day. And what we had promised is that we would create the opportunity for another event on the arrival of that bridge. So we're working with our government partners around the possibility of doing that. The other thing that I would like to extend an invitation, David, if that's okay, is to, now that we have access to the site again, is to invite our board members to a tour again. Mm-hmm. So we can work with you, Steve, and the rest of the board members to find an appropriate date for especially our new board members, but I would actually encourage all our board members to see this in person because it is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, that video was amazing, David. Thank you. It's really helpful to get a perspective of it. David, in terms of the date of the bridge, I guess because the way it's moving, it's not possible to define a specific date until later on. Like when, I'm just thinking of this announcement. When do you think you would know like a date where we might be able to organize something?
We won't know until November, until the bridge is actually on the barge and is ready to go. The contractor can't pin down an arrival date. It's literally that difficult to do.
And that's really about the water conditions and how quickly they can get through the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Yeah.
So we will work to keep the government members apprised and our contacts that are on the phone. So we will probably be able to narrow it down to a week. The question will be how quickly we can narrow it down to a day.
Okay, great, great. Okay, well,
David,
yeah, go
can I
ahead.
just ask a question? Yeah, I agree with Steve. That video is really, really helpful to contextualize it. Are we able to do those regularly and then maybe put a time sequenced video of the progression down there? Because I think it would be a really good marketing tool for all the stuff that we're doing down there. Is that possible?
Yeah, it is. We do that about once a month, and all of those videos are posted to our Portland's website, so anyone can go on and see them. And yes, we will, towards the end of the project, start putting those together so that they act more as a bit of a time lapse.
And I think the other one that we shared before, and we actually have it in the lobby here, is, and I think it's very impactful, is the other part of a previous video shows what this will look like at the end. So you get to see the bike trails, you get to see Canoe Cove and all the activities that'll be on the island. It's very impactful. So Kevin, we are on it, and I don't know if Cameron, you want to add anything from our communication side.
No, we do propagate them as well on YouTube, and we get lots of coverage, and then we get sort of additional coverage, blog TO, etc. They're often writing stories based on our videos, so they seem to be doing a pretty good job in terms of propagation.
The other story that came out, I guess, Cameron, you can speak to this, about a week ago, was the improvements through the fish habitats that we have.
I've got
yeah.
Oh, okay, great. So actually, David's going to speak to it, so I'm going to just shut up at this point, but let you move on.
Okay, can we carry on with this one, Charmaine? So this is a video that we produced, the relocation of the fire hall. So you can see the amount of work it's taken just to prepare this building for moving. Built this structure underneath it, and then you can see over the course of several days moved it, and the building only moved about 50 to 75 meters due south, and the reason for that is that in its current location it is actually in the LRT right-of-way for Commissioner Street, which needs to widen to accommodate the future streetcar LRT. So here we're moving it into the park. It will become a building owned by city parks. We're going to construct some public washrooms in the building, and then parks will use it for management office space and some other uses yet to be determined. And currently, this was done. This building moved in July. The contractor's now constructing the finished foundations below the building. So interestingly enough, we move it and then build the foundations below it to support the structure. You can see there it is in its final location, having moved off its existing foundations, which are now gone, by the way. And then we have one more very brief video, which is the West Cove we showed in the previous drone video. TRCA is conducting fish audits. So they, because they couldn't get a boat in here, they used a submersible camera and have identified 3 species that they haven't seen in the inner harbor. The bluegill, they'll come up. The pumpkin seed, which I've never heard of before, which we'll see momentarily. And the largemouth bass. So you can see, I mean, that's all of these fish are in that little cove that we looked at.
Wow.
Okay, next. Another interesting development is excavating the elbow. The contractor excavated down into the peat, but didn't go any further than that as they excavated in other areas. And what's happened is that we have seen growth here of seeds that were in that peat and have been in that peat for at least 100 years. So these are 100-year-old seeds that have sprouted. We've now got biologists out collecting the seeds and transplanting these plants, and we will be attempting to reuse and relocate these in the planting for the river. And this is a pretty spectacular development that we really weren't expecting. Next. As mentioned, you can see the crane. We have completed the wet excavation in the mouth of the river at Polson Slip, and are about getting ready to start the Canoe Cove excavation as well. Next. I mentioned the crib walls, so part of the structure to keep the river in its final location. We have constructed these crib walls with large trees. The trees and those boulders act as a structure to hold the river in place, and the root wads, which project into the river itself, will become fish habitat. Mentioned the elbow excavation, so about 60 to 70% complete, and will be complete all of the excavation for the river by the end of the year. MT35 tiebacks, we saw those in the drone video as well. So the contractor has dropped steel piles and is reinforcing the tie rods to ensure that the dock wall is brought back up to a strength that will be able to bear the weight of the park being built adjacent to it. Next. I mentioned the pedestrian bridge foundations and the reuse of the steel from MT35 for those bridges. Next slide. Just a shot of the Central River Valley itself. Keep moving. And then Commissioner Street Bridge. So at the time of this photo, the bridges had been taken off the abutments so they could be joined together. They have been moved back. They're not quite seated yet on the concrete, but they are. It's been moved back into location, and the bridges, two halves, are being welded together. And that process, as I mentioned, is going to take probably another month and a half or so. Thanks.
It's a final slide, David.
Thank you.
David, great presentation and doing an amazing job. This is, really very complex and a lot of construction going on. So very impressive, and thank you. Does anyone have any questions of David?
Steve, it's Jeannie. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
David, I'm wondering the fish story and the historic seeds, that's like incredible. Made my week. Have we engaged with our First Nations partners? Would love to learn, kind of get their perspective and some history on what we're finding.
We certainly are, and in fact, we're looking to trying to plan an event with the First Nations as we begin the process of planting. Currently, until we are a little further through on COVID, unfortunately, we're not able to finalize that, but we are working with them to ensure that they're part of what we're doing. And in fact, we are currently in the process of procuring or identifying Indigenous designers to complete 6 or 7. Chris, do you know exactly how many 6 or 7 different elements in the parks?
It's 5, actually.
Was it 5? Okay. So 5 different elements in the throughout the parks, which will be integrated in the work that we're doing. So yes, we are definitely engaged with and working with partners.
Great, good question.
Great, thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion then to go into the closed session? Jeannie?
Yes, I'll move that, Steve.
Okay, great. And
I'll second it, Steve.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, so now we're going to all approve. We're going to go into the closed session. Okay, so having concluded all of the closed session items, we've moved a motion to go back into open session, which was moved by Jack and seconded by Leslie. And now that we're in public session, I'd like a motion to approve the June 24th, 2021 board meeting closed session minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move it. It's Jeannie.
Okay, Jeannie and Drew, all in favor? Carrie?
Aye.
And a motion to approve the July 19th, 21 board meeting closed session minutes. A mover and seconder, Jack and Wendy, all in favor?
Thank you.
Carried. Thank you. So once again, thank everybody for their hard work and participation in the meeting. Appreciate it. And I'll ask now for a motion to terminate the meeting.
I move.
Great, thank you. Seconded, and
Jack.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're done. Thanks, everybody. We're even done it within 2 minutes early.